Elon Musk disguises as a homeless man and is kicked out, but his revenge shuts the place down. It was a cold, gray morning, the kind that wrapped the city in a blanket of gloom. Outside the Grandstone Club, an exclusive luxury lounge for top-tier executives and business elites, a disheveled man stood near the entrance, watching the steady stream of well-dressed guests passing by. His clothes were ragged, his coat worn at the edges, and his hat pulled low to hide his face. His beard was thick and unkempt, giving him the look of a man who had spent more than a few nights sleeping on the streets. But beneath the tattered disguise was none other than Elon Musk. He had carefully crafted this appearance, every detail meticulously planned. This was no spur-of-the-moment decision, this was an experiment. Elon had grown curious about how places like the Grandstone Club, known for catering to the city's wealthiest, treated those who didn't fit the mold. He wanted to see the truth for himself, unfiltered and raw. He stood by the door for several minutes, watching as guests were greeted with warm smiles and ushered inside without question. No one glanced his way. No one offered him a second look. Finally, Elon decided to test the waters. He walked up to the entrance, his head slightly bowed, and approached the doorman. "Excuse me," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "Could I come in for a moment to warm up?" The doorman's eyes flicked over him, taking in every detail, the worn-out coat, the scuffed shoes, the tired expression. His face hardened instantly. "This is a private establishment," the doorman said, crossing his arms. "You're not welcome here." "I won't cause any trouble," Elon said, keeping his tone calm. "I just need a few minutes to warm up." The doorman smirked. "I don't think so. You're not exactly our clientele." A few guests nearby stopped to watch, their eyes filled with curiosity and judgment. Some whispered among themselves, clearly amused by the situation. "Please," Elon tried again. "I'm not asking for much. Just a little kindness." But the doorman's patience had worn thin. He reached for his radio, signaling security. "I'll give you one last chance to leave, or I'll have you escorted out." The air grew tense as two security guards appeared, their expressions stern. One of them grabbed Elon's arm, his grip firm. "You heard him," the guard said. "Time to go." Elon allowed himself to be led away, his heart pounding, not with fear, but with excitement. This was exactly what he had expected, and it was only the beginning. As the guards pushed him toward the street, one of them leaned in close. "Don't come back," he warned. "We don't want people like you hanging around." Elon nodded, saying nothing. He walked away slowly, disappearing into the crowd. Elon walked down the street, his face calm despite the humiliation he'd just endured. Every step he took, his mind worked faster, piecing together the next phase of his plan. This wasn't just an experiment anymore, it was personal. The Grandstone Club had built its reputation on exclusivity, catering to the city's elite with little regard for anyone they deemed unworthy. The way they had treated him, dismissing him without a second thought, confirmed what Elon had suspected all along. The club wasn't just arrogant, it was rotten at its core. But that was about to change. Elon reached a quiet coffee shop a few blocks away and pulled out his phone. He scrolled through his contacts until he found the number of his longtime advisor, Clara. "Clara," he said when she picked up, "I need you to dig into the Grandstone Club for me. I want to know everything: ownership, management, financials. And send our legal team the details too. We might need them." Clara hesitated. "The Grandstone Club? What happened?" "I'll explain later," Elon said, his tone steady but firm. "For now, just trust me." "Got it," Clara replied. "I'll get back to you in an hour." Elon hung up and leaned back in his chair, sipping his coffee. He could already see how this would play out step by step. The club had made a critical mistake, and he was about to teach them a lesson they wouldn't forget. Back at the Grandstone Club, everything seemed business as usual. The wealthy patrons continued their leisurely conversations over expensive champagne, oblivious to the storm that was about to hit. But the first crack appeared just an hour later, when Clara called back. She said, "Here's what we've got. The club is owned by a private investment group called Summit Holdings, but it's been struggling financially for months. Membership renewals are down, and they're drowning in debt. If the right kind of pressure is applied, the whole operation could collapse." Elon smiled. Perfect. Let's apply that pressure. He opened Twitter and typed out a message, keeping it short and simple. Exclusive clubs should treat all people with respect. Today, I learned that not all do. Stay tuned. Within minutes, the tweet exploded. Elon's followers speculated wildly about what had happened, and hashtags like #GrandstoneScandal and #ElonSpeaksOut began trending. Journalists started digging, trying to connect the dots. Several reporters reached out to the Grandstone Club for comment, but the management remained silent, unsure how to respond. Elon, meanwhile, wasn't done. He spent the next few hours coordinating with his legal team and reviewing the club's financial vulnerabilities. Then he made another call. I want to buy out the building they're operating from, he told his real estate consultant. Quietly but fast. The next morning, the headlines were everywhere. Elon Musk hints at discrimination incident at exclusive club. Social media erupts. What happened at the Grandstone Club? Musk's cryptic tweet sparks investigation. Exclusive no more? Club faces scrutiny after Musk's public statement. By midday, the club was in full-blown crisis mode. Membership cancellations began pouring in as patrons distanced themselves from the scandal. Sponsors and business partners reconsidered their associations. The club's reputation was crumbling faster than anyone could have imagined. Then came the final blow. At exactly 3 p.m., Elon sent out a second tweet. Discrimination has no place in our society or in business. I've purchased the building housing the Grandstone Club. The current management will be evicted, effective immediately. The space will be converted into a community center focused on innovation and inclusivity. The internet exploded. News outlets picked up the story within seconds, their headlines growing more dramatic with each update. Social media users flooded the comment sections, cheering Elon's decision. This is how you handle elitism. Shut it down. Elon turned that club into a community center? Absolute legend. The Grandstone Club messed with the wrong guy. Back at the Grandstone Club, the staff and management stared at their phones in stunned silence. The building was no longer theirs. It belonged to Elon Musk, and they had been given notice to vacate. The manager, a man named Jonathan Hargrove, was the first to react. His face turned pale as he reread the announcement. This can't be real, he muttered, pacing back and forth. It's real, one of the employees said, showing him the confirmation from their landlord. We've got 30 days to leave. Hargrove collapsed into a chair, his mind racing. He knew they couldn't fight this. The lease was airtight, and Musk's legal team had already made it clear that there would be no extensions. We've lost everything, Hargrove whispered. A few days later, the transformation of the building began. Construction crews moved in, stripping away the club's luxurious interior and replacing it with open, welcoming spaces designed for the community. The new center would offer free workshops on entrepreneurship, innovation labs for young inventors, and event spaces for local groups. Elon visited the site regularly, overseeing the progress. He made sure the new center reflected the very values the Grandstone Club had ignored: openness, kindness, and the belief that everyone deserved a chance to succeed. On the grand opening day, hundreds of people gathered outside the newly renovated building. A banner above the entrance read, "Welcome to the Horizon Center, where everyone belongs." Elon stood on the steps, addressing the crowd. This center represents a new beginning, he said, his voice steady. A place where anyone, regardless of their background, can learn, grow, and create. It's proof that no matter how exclusive the world may seem, there's always room for something better. The crowd erupted into applause. Families, entrepreneurs, students, and community leaders all celebrated the new space. It wasn't just a building. It was a symbol of what could happen when power was used for good. In the days that followed, the Horizon Center became a beacon of hope for the city. Local businesses offered support, volunteers signed up in droves, and the center quickly became a hub of creativity and innovation. Elon watched from afar, content to let the community take the reins. He knew the real magic would come from the people who filled the space with ideas and dreams. And as he walked through the city one quiet evening, he couldn't help but smile. The Grandstone Club had tried to push him away, to treat him like he didn't belong. But in the end, it was their own arrogance that had sealed their fate. Because sometimes, revenge wasn't about destruction, it was about building something better. Weeks after the opening of the Horizon Center, the transformation was impossible to ignore. What had once been an exclusive haven for the wealthy was now a thriving community hub, buzzing with life and opportunity. From early morning until late evening, the building was filled with activity, young entrepreneurs pitching ideas, families attending workshops, and students exploring new technologies in innovation labs. The city had embraced the center wholeheartedly. News outlets ran feature stories about its impact, highlighting real-life success stories that were already emerging. The Grandstone Club, once the symbol of elitism and exclusion, was nothing more than a fading memory. Elon visited the center often, but he kept a low profile, preferring to let the community take ownership of its success. On one of these visits, he wandered into a workshop on small business development. The room was packed with aspiring entrepreneurs, each eager to turn their ideas into reality. As he leaned against the back wall, listening quietly, a woman approached him hesitantly. She looked familiar, then it clicked. She was the same woman who had given him $5 the day he stood outside the bank in his homeless disguise. "Mr. Musk," she said, her eyes wide with surprise. Elon smiled. "It's good to see you again." The woman, whose name was Angela, looked around, taking in the bustling activity. "I didn't realize you were behind all this." "I'm amazed." Elon chuckled softly. "It's funny how things come full circle, isn't it?" Angela nodded, her expression turning serious. "I never told you this, but that day, I was having a hard time myself. I gave you that $5 because I knew what it felt like to struggle. I had no idea who you were, but you looked like you needed a little kindness. And you gave it," Elon said, his voice warm. That small act of kindness started something much bigger than either of us could have imagined. Angela blinked back tears. "It's incredible what you've done here. You've given so many people a chance to rebuild their lives." "You were part of it too," Elon said. "Sometimes, it just takes one person to set things in motion." A few days later, Robert Langston, the former manager of the Grandstone Club, found himself standing outside the Horizon Center. He had read about its success in the papers, but seeing it in person was something else entirely. The building was almost unrecognizable, bright, inviting, filled with energy. Langston hesitated, unsure whether he should go inside. He had been at the center of the scandal that led to the club's downfall, and while he had moved on to a new job, the experience had left him shaken. Part of him wondered if he even belonged there. But then he saw Elon standing near the entrance, talking to a group of students. Their eyes met, and Elon smiled, waving him over. "Robert," Elon said warmly. "I'm glad you stopped by." Langston shifted uncomfortably. "I wasn't sure if I should." "Of course you should," Elon said. "This place is about second chances. And you're part of the story, whether you realize it or not." Langston looked around, taking in the sights and sounds of the bustling center. He could see the joy and hope on people's faces, the sense of possibility that hung in the air. It was a stark contrast to the exclusivity and coldness that had defined the Grandstone Club. "You've really created something special here," Langston said quietly. "It's inspiring." Elon nodded. "It's the people who make it special. I just helped open the door." They stood in silence for a moment, watching as a group of children played with robotics kits in one of the labs. "I'd like to help," Langston said suddenly, his voice filled with determination. "I know I made mistakes, but I've learned a lot. Maybe I can give something back." Elon's eyes lit up. "We can always use more people who care. Welcome aboard." In the months that followed, Langston became one of the center's most dedicated volunteers. He used his experience in business to mentor young entrepreneurs, helping them navigate the challenges of starting their own ventures. His story of transformation became one of the center's most powerful examples of how change was possible no matter where you started. Meanwhile, the Horizon Center continued to grow. New programs were added, coding boot camps, mental health support groups, and partnerships with local schools. The waiting list for workshops grew longer every week, and donations poured in from people inspired by Elon's vision. One afternoon, Clara called Elon with exciting news. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "The Kindness Project just hit a new milestone, 1 million documented acts of kindness. And we've received thousands of letters from people whose lives have been changed because of it." Elon smiled, his chest swelling with pride. "That's incredible. I never thought it would grow this fast." "It's a movement now," Clara said. "Something much bigger than any of us." Elon sat back in his chair, reflecting on how far things had come. He thought back to the moment outside the Grandstone Club when he had been dragged away by security, dismissed as nothing more than a nuisance. He could still hear the guard's words, "We don't want people like you hanging around." And yet, here he was, standing at the center of something far greater than the Grandstone Club had ever been. It was a reminder that every challenge, every rejection, was an opportunity in disguise. Sometimes, the best revenge wasn't about tearing something down, it was about building something better. On the 1-year anniversary of the Horizon Center's opening, a celebration was held. Hundreds of people gathered to share their stories, each one a testament to the power of second chances and human connection. Families who had once struggled were now thriving. Young innovators who had found guidance at the center were launching their own startups. Lives had been transformed, one act of kindness at a time. Elon stood on the stage, looking out at the crowd, his heart full. "This place is proof of what happens when we choose to care," he said, his voice steady. "It's a reminder that every small act of kindness has the potential to change someone's life. And when enough of us come together, we can change the world." The crowd erupted into applause, the sound echoing through the streets. As Elon stepped down from the stage, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The journey had been unexpected, filled with twists and turns, but it had led to something truly beautiful. And as he walked through the crowd, shaking hands and exchanging smiles, he knew one thing for certain. The best revenge wasn't about getting even, it was about making the world better for everyone. As the sun dipped below the Horizon Center was alive with celebration. The anniversary event had brought together people from all walks of life, families, business leaders, community organizers, and dozens of young entrepreneurs who had started their journeys within the center's walls. Elon stood quietly at the back, taking it all in. The energy in the air was electric, and yet, it was the stories being shared that moved him the most. One by one, people took to the stage to speak about how their lives had changed. A young woman named Camila stepped up to the microphone. She adjusted her glasses nervously, glancing at the crowd. "A year ago, I was homeless," she began. "I lost my job and couldn't afford rent. I thought my life was over." Her voice caught for a moment, but she pushed on. "But then I found the Horizon Center. They gave me a chance. I took the entrepreneurship course, and now I've started my own business making eco-friendly clothing. I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving." The crowd erupted in applause as Camila wiped a tear from her cheek. Elon smiled softly, his heart swelling with pride. These were the moments that made everything worth it. A few more speakers followed, each story more inspiring than the last. A father who had launched a successful food truck business, a teenager who had built an app to help his community connect with mental health resources, a teacher who had developed an after-school program for at-risk youth. Each one was a testament to the power of opportunity and second chances. Then, to Elon's surprise, Robert Langston was called to the stage. The crowd quieted as he approached the microphone. "Good evening," Langston began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "For those of you who don't know me, I was once the manager of the Grandstone Club, the building that used to stand here. I'm not proud of the way I acted back then. I was blinded by arrogance, focused only on profit and exclusivity. I dismissed people without giving them a chance, without seeing their humanity." He paused, scanning the crowd. "But life has a funny way of humbling you. When Mr. Musk transformed this place into the Horizon Center, it gave me a second chance too. I've spent the past year volunteering here, and it's been the most rewarding experience of my life. I've learned more about kindness, resilience, and the power of community than I ever thought possible." Langston's voice softened. "This place isn't just a community center, it's a beacon of hope. And I'm grateful to be part of it." The crowd burst into applause, and Langston stepped down from the stage, his face flushed but proud. Elon caught his eye and gave him a nod of approval. Later that evening, Elon stood outside, gazing up at the stars. The celebration continued inside, laughter and music spilling out into the night air. Clara joined him, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Quite a night," she said, handing him one of the cups. "Quite a year," Elon replied, taking a sip. Clara smiled. "You've done something incredible here. You turned a bad situation into something that's changing lives." "It's not just me," Elon said. "It's everyone who believed in the vision. People like you, Langston, Camila. This place belongs to them." They stood in silence for a moment, watching as families and friends poured out of the building, their faces lit with hope and possibility. "You know," Clara said thoughtfully, "there's something poetic about the whole thing. You were thrown out of that building, humiliated in front of everyone. And now it's one of the most inspiring places in the city." Full circle moments like that don't happen often. Elon chuckled. "No, they don't. But when they do, they're worth it." As the months passed, the Horizon Center continued to thrive, becoming a model for other cities around the world. More centers were opened, each one inspired by the original, places where people could come together, learn, and build brighter futures. Media outlets dubbed it the Musk effect, celebrating his ability to turn setbacks into opportunities for positive change. Business schools added case studies about the transformation of the Grandstone Club, and leaders across industries began rethinking how they treated their customers and employees. But for Elon, the greatest reward was seeing lives change. He visited the Horizon Center often, always taking time to listen to the stories of those it had helped. One day, while walking through the center's innovation lab, he noticed a young boy tinkering with a small robot. The boy's face was a mask of concentration as he carefully adjusted the robot's arm. "Looks like you've got something interesting there," Elon said, crouching down beside him. The boy looked up, his eyes wide with excitement. "I'm building a robot that can pick up trash and recycle it automatically," he said proudly. "One day, it'll clean up parks and streets all by itself." Elon grinned. "That's a brilliant idea. What's your name?" "Marcus," the boy said. "Well, Marcus, I think you've got the potential to change the world," Elon said. "Keep working on that robot. I can't wait to see what it can do." Marcus beamed. "Thanks, Mr. Musk." That night, Elon returned to his home, his mind buzzing with ideas. He sat on his balcony, staring out at the city lights. His phone buzzed with a message from Clara. "Great work today. You should be proud." Elon typed back, "Thanks. But there's still more to do." He set his phone down and leaned back in his chair. The journey was far from over, but that was part of what made it exciting. There were always new challenges to face, new problems to solve, and new opportunities to create something meaningful. And if there was one thing Elon Musk knew for sure, it was this. Sometimes the most powerful innovations weren't found in technology or business. They were found in the simple, everyday acts of kindness that had the power to change everything. Several months after the anniversary celebration, the Horizon Center was no longer just a community project. It had become a symbol of resilience and transformation. People from across the country came to visit, drawn by the stories of lives being rebuilt and futures being reimagined. Elon often strolled through the center quietly, listening to the laughter of children in the innovation labs and the determined voices of young entrepreneurs pitching new ideas. It had become his favorite place, a reminder that change was possible even in the most unexpected ways. One day, he found himself back in the community cafe located in the heart of the building. The cafe was bustling with activity, patrons sipping coffee while chatting about their latest projects. It felt like the beating heart of the center, a space where ideas flowed freely and connections were forged. As Elon sat at a corner table, a familiar face appeared in front of him. It was Angela, the kind woman who had once given him $5 when she thought he was homeless. This time, she looked radiant, her eyes bright with confidence. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, holding a cup of tea. "Of course," Elon said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Angela sat down, her hands wrapped around her cup. "I've been meaning to thank you again," she said. "My business is doing better than I ever imagined. I just signed a deal with a major retailer to carry my clothing line. None of it would have been possible without this place, and without you." Elon smiled. "I didn't do it alone. You had the courage to take that first step. That's what made the difference." Angela nodded thoughtfully. "It's funny. When I gave you that $5, I thought I was helping you. I never imagined it would come full circle like this." "That's the beauty of kindness," Elon said. "It has a way of coming back to you when you least expect it." Later that evening, Elon stood on the roof of the Horizon Center, gazing out at the city skyline. The sun had just set, casting a soft glow over the buildings. Below him, the streets were alive with movement, families walking together, street vendors setting up for the night, and laughter echoing from nearby cafes. The city had changed little by little since the center had opened. The spirit of the Horizon Center had spread far beyond its walls, inspiring other communities to create their own spaces for growth and connection. Elon's phone buzzed with a message from Clara. "Just got the latest report. The second Horizon Center is opening next month, and we've received inquiries from 5 more cities. It's growing faster than we ever expected." Elon typed back, "That's incredible. Let's keep it going." He slipped his phone into his pocket and took a deep breath. The journey had been unpredictable, filled with twists and turns, but standing there on that rooftop, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: peace. He knew the work was far from over. There would always be new challenges, new obstacles to overcome. But that was part of the adventure. And for the first time in years, he felt truly content. The next morning, Elon returned to the center early, just as the doors were opening. The building was quiet, bathed in the soft light of dawn. He walked through the empty halls, thinking about all the people whose lives had intersected here, people who had found hope, opportunity, and second chances. As he reached the innovation lab, he noticed a small robot sitting on a table. It looked familiar. "Marcus's trash-collecting robot," Elon said with a chuckle. He picked it up, examining the design. It was rough around the edges, but it was clear that Marcus had put his heart into building it. Elon set the robot down and made a mental note to check in with Marcus later. Kids like him were the future, and Elon was determined to give them every opportunity to succeed. He stood there for a long moment, absorbing the stillness, before heading back outside. The streets were starting to fill with people, the same city that had once turned its back on him when he stood outside the Grandstone Club in his disguise. But now, things were different. He could feel it in the way people smiled at him, the way they treated each other with just a little more kindness, a little more empathy. The world wasn't perfect, but it was changing. And that, Elon thought, was enough.